So, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to this first ever meeting of the Infrastructure and Projects Committee. Today we have apologies from Mayor Clark and from Councillor Stewart. Will someone move that we receive those? Thank you, Trish. Thank you, Leslie. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. We have Zoom attendees, or we should anyway, have Councillor Dermody and Councillor Crackett on Zoom. We don't seem to have them at the moment, but no doubt they will join us shortly. Does anybody have any interests that they wish to declare? Yes.
Yes, Chair. I have a question, and it regards this being the very first meeting of the Infrastructure and Projects Committee. I look at the agenda and it's purely infrastructure, and obviously with projects we have an update, like graphs and stuff like that. So I'm just trying to gauge the format of how this committee works. Does the projects not merge in, or how does it work? Because obviously if you want to ask questions about projects, this is the committee to ask it in.
So I think if you look again, Councillor, you'll find that there are elements of both in this. Obviously, Walkner Place, for example, is certainly both a project and, I guess, infrastructure. So too Stead Street, so too is elderly persons housing. The consenting programme for the three large water-related projects are all projects as well as to do with infrastructure. So, of course, the purpose of combining these two was that as we look forward beyond the museum, we find that most large projects are in fact in the infrastructure area. So inevitably there's going to be a mixture of the two. So I think in answer to your question, I don't expect to see a list of papers headed projects and a list of papers headed infrastructure. They will in fact be a mixture of the two. As I think,
yeah, I can add just
I think you missed the point.
Maybe I did.
Of the graph and chart that shows the projects and the progress, money spent so far, stuff like that. None of that is listed here. Now, if I had a question about one of those projects, like the CCTV project, it's not there.
I can speak to that.
So you want to comment?
Yeah, absolutely. That strategic program update comes bi-monthly to the committee. It came bi-monthly to when it was the Finance and Projects Committee. Because it went last month to the last meeting of the Finance and Projects Committee, we didn't bring it this month to the new Infrastructure and Projects Committee, and it will come next month to the Infrastructure and Projects Committee and then continue bi-monthly from there.
Right. Do we still have the opportunity to ask questions on projects in this committee?
Look,
They're not
well,
on the agenda.
No, I mean,
I think the answer to that is probably no, Councillor, because we
Okay.
have no paper on the matter.
okay. No, that's fine. So,
Yeah.
so anything that's relevant to something, so we have to wait 2 months to ask a question.
Yeah. So sorry for misunderstanding. Well, no, actually, I mean, if you feel it is important, and I think you would have a reasonable point, you could bring that paper to every one of these meetings, in which case, I see the fact that it's 2 monthly. I think you certainly could bring it to every one of these meetings if we...
It's just difficult because we have the project control groups that all sit under that, so all of those monthly meetings have to feed in, and it just becomes difficult with timing to bring it every month.
Okay, but you could bring the previous one to the following meeting if it felt important that there's an opportunity to ask questions on it, even if it's a month out of date.
Yeah.
I see we got an update yesterday by email, but it was very informal and obviously not public, and I didn't think that was really the appropriate platform for a briefing.
So what we'll do then, Councillor, is we will update it every second month, but we will still bring the paper, albeit at the table anyway, albeit a month out of date, to each of these meetings. So as you say, there is an opportunity to ask questions on them, even if there is no paper on the matter.
I think that sounds fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for misunderstanding your original question. So that takes us to a public forum, and we have 3 presentations today. Sorry.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Just that there may be a perception of conflict of interest because I am on both the Board of Governors of Te Marama and an alternate rep to Te Rūnanga Ngātahu, both of which are referred to in these documents. I'm a governor, not a worker, so in actual fact I'm not part of either, but just so as people quite clear on where I am in this particular process, I am not part of the
So you're always very good, Evelyn, at putting your hand up and saying, hey, maybe I should, you know.
Yeah.
And no doubt you'll do that again if the point emerges.
I feel the necessity.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to public forum, and we'll begin with the Walkner Place petition, which is in the name of Julie Bryce, who's not here. Okay, so will someone move that we receive that petition? Thank you, Darryl, and thank Darren, and thank you, Leslie. Seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So then that takes us to the Stead Street pump station, and I think Paul is here, isn't he, to Paul and Scott. So Paul and Scott, the floor's yours. I guess we're just keen to hear how that project is going, and you know, a wee bit through the rear view mirror, how you felt it went.
Yeah. Kia ora. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Council. It's always nice to visit another council and share in our infrastructure projects, because I know that you're interested in the development of Stead Street, but also maybe all of our other infrastructure works. So I'm Paul Hulse. I'm the General Manager for Integrated Catchment Management. I'm responsible for the Stead Street project, and I'll let Scott introduce himself also.
Scott Peterson from the Building Intelligence Group, Project Manager for the Stead Street Pump Station.
So we'll give you, it's more of a technical specification update. We'll give you some background as well. With, as you know, the Stead Street Pump Station was a project, part of the Climate Resilience Government's funded project. We are nearing conclusion. I think we're aiming for a mid-August official opening of the facility, so we'll keep you updated as to when that happens. But I am, for one, delighted. I don't know anybody else that manages large infrastructure projects. It's good to see the end in sight, and so it's good to be able to confirm that to you today. And it's a significant project. It's something we haven't delivered for, you know, we've not been building big projects for a good number of years, so this is our first major built project, and we're really proud of what it's going to deliver for this region, because it'll be quite significant. So without too much more, we'll start the presentation, and feel free to stop us at any point and ask any questions.
So I guess to kick off...
We will, can I just say, I probably prefer that we take questions at the end rather than as we run through.
Absolutely fine. Thanks, Jeff.
So kick off, just as a bit of a background to the project and why it was required. So the original pump station that you can see in the photo is on Stead Street, about halfway down from the airport. It was built in the 1950s. It has old technology which is no longer suitable, primarily the axial flow pumps, which don't permit fish passage through the estuary and back in to the drainage network. During the 1984 flood, the water levels were about a third of the way up that building you can see there towards the roof line. So you can understand sort of how much water can end up in that catchment area there, which is the Lake Hawkins catchment where the airport's located. And then we've got the sheep
So
pile.
could I ask you just to pull your microphone up?
Yep.
The audio in this room is very poor. Nobody can hear you without speaking into that.
No problem. How's that? In the photo there to the right, there's the sheep pile wall, which was the Stead Street stop bank. So this project meshes in quite well with the ICC's Stead Street stop bank project. So what we ended up coming up with in terms of the design was a new pump station with Archimedes screw pumps, quite a different and a unique designed to the pumps which are in the existing pump station. And you can see here on the left the pump station there in relation to where the existing pump station is, with the new outlet pipes which pass under Stead Street and out through the existing sheet pile wall along Stead Street. That photo on the right is a few months ago, just in terms of progress on site, and you can see those are the two pumps under the frames. You can see there in the background in the inlet bay where the drainage network connects up to the pump station. So again, a bit of the backgrounds around why this was required. So the Lake Hawkins drainage network is over 1,500 hectares, and it's only about 5 foot above sea level and requires that protection in terms of sea storm and inundation. And the flood protection is a statutory obligation under the RMA. There's the new pump station is designed based on the climate change modelling, based on the NIWA 2050 predictions for sea level rise and rainfall data. It's part of the wider climate resilience program that ES have implemented across the district. And one of the key points, and particularly in touch with this in a bit later on, is these Archimedes screw pumps. The existing axial flow pumps aren't fish friendly and don't meet the requirements of the national environmental standards for fresh water, and don't allow fish to pass through into the estuary and back in to the drainage network for migration. We've had results from, so this is the second pump station in the country that's utilised Archimedes screw pumps, and the first, built in the Waikato, demonstrated 100% survival for tuna and for other freshwater species passing through the pump station. So they are effective compared to the existing axial flow pumps, which don't permit fish passage. So this is a bit of a summary on the design for these pumps. So the one there in green is the design for the existing axial flow pumps. So they work much like an impeller in a jet boat motor. They don't permit fish to pass through into the estuary just because they don't have that ability, and often fish that do make it through will end up with significant injuries. And then the animation you can see there on the right is the Archimedes screw pump design, which actually lifts water in elevation rather than pumping water as part of its design. These pumps are designed in the Netherlands by a company called Fishflow Innovation, and they were brought into the country, as I said, first by the Waikato pump station and second by Environment South.
So Scott may touch on this later, but certainly the maintenance of an Archimedes screw with a gearbox is a lot simpler than the management and maintenance of your typical pump. So not only will they protect fish and allow them to transition from one environment to the next, but also I think that it's the most efficient way to pump water, it seems, and really the maintenance that we'll have to do over the 50 or 60 years should be massively reduced, because it's a very simple design and simple concept.
They're effectively just a large steel tube surrounded by a fiberglass inclined plane, so they're quite simple in terms of their design, and then driven by a motor and gearbox housed in that steel frame you can see there in the bottom photos. So as Paul says, a lot less intensive in terms of maintenance and ongoing costs. So again, just some general details around the pumps. So they are 2.5 metres in diameter. Both pumps were around 700,000 to get shipped here from the Netherlands from Fishflow Innovations. They discharge a maximum of 1.6 cubic, so that's 1.6 cubic metres per second at 26 RPM, and that's our maximum speed to maintain the level of the drain under flow conditions. They lift water approximately 4 metres into a wet well, which then passes under Stead Street through head pressure and out into the estuary. They're two 90 kilowatt motors which deliver quite a significant amount of torque, 31 kilonewton metres. And again, as I mentioned before, steel sleeve and fiberglass construction, got a design life beyond 50 years, and they discharge out into the estuary in twin 1400 millimetre diameter pipes. They're quite significant in terms of the pipes that you can see there in that photo on the right that pass under Steed Street and out into the estuary.
So in the 84 flood, obviously Scott alluded to the fact that the pump station went underwater, so it was inoperable at the point you needed it. This is, as you can see, much higher up, so we'll be able to continue to pump in those circumstances, which is great. We're also looking to deliver, you correct me on this, about 40% more pumping capability than the old pump, so when we need it, we can pump during the event and also clear the drainage much quicker than we can with the older system, so that's a real win.
Yep. The pumps are designed to come on. A single pump will cycle in terms of its duty. It'll either be pump 1 or 2 that runs on a day-to-day basis, pumping out the drainage network, and then as the level of the drain increases and we end up in flood conditions, both pumps come online to bring us to the full 1.6 cubics per pump at that 26 RPM. So I'm not sure if this is a bit of an image or video, sorry, that just demonstrates how they work. I'm not sure if that can be. Can that play on the system? No, good.
So it was
That's
a
right.
basic animation that would show you, from the fish perspective, I suppose, going through the Archimedes screws and that. So it's quite an interesting animation, but it doesn't work.
Yep. These can be found on Fishflow Innovations website anyway, if anyone is interested on just how they work. So this is a cross section through the pump station, which, and I've highlighted there along the bottom is our fish passage return pipe and actuated valve. So this allows fish, as they pass through the pumps and out to the estuary, to come back into the drainage network, which is part of our eel monitoring plan, and they'll come back into the estuary through the pheromones that are picked up in the fresh water, and there's a specific process and protocol around how that fish passage return opens with regards to the tide cycle, so that we don't end up with a significant amount of saline water into the drainage network while the pumps are pumping against the incoming tide. And that's all part of the commissioning process that we're going through at the moment and getting this pump station completed and up and running. So it allows particularly tuna to come back into the drainage network and other migratory species to enter the Lake Hawkins drainage network without having one-way fish passage. And according to NIWA and some of the discussions we've had, this is one of the first instances in the country where we've actually developed this fish passage return back into the network. And again, just another more detailed drawing on the extent of the infrastructure that's under Steed Street itself. So you can see there on the left is the wet well from the Archimedes screw pumps, which are delivering water and on the left hand side of Steed Street, and then that pipe work passes under Steed Street and out to the estuary. There's gates that sit within the wet well which allow us to control what the pumps are pumping against in terms of and making sure that when we have a high tide event we haven't got water again coming back in and inundating the control room. And probably one of the other main points to touch on is, as part of the 1984 floods, the transformer and switchgear which sits next to the existing pump station are actually under that high water level during the floods. And as part of this work, we've actually designed to construct the transformer and ring main unit, which also feeds Otara, on top of the platform you can see there on the left hand side. So it's above the 1984 flood levels, to make sure that we've got that protection going forward for the facility. I think that's about it, just in terms of a summary on Yeah, that's a good point, Paul. Yep. So as part of the work we're also doing is working through cultural narrative artwork, which will be installed, and we've got the foundations installed for on the Stead Street side of the pump station. So that artwork, the Waipai Runak is working on developing that with a number of suppliers that who are also involved with the Stead Street stop bank, and that's due to be installed in the next couple of months, and we're trying to coordinate that at the moment in terms of opening with the pump station and the installation of the artwork.
So adding cultural narrative to already an area of rich cultural narrative in the work that you've done as well, so we hope that will go really well. So, I think that's about it. We're just, like I say, I'm delighted that we are nearing the end, and an official opening ceremony will be sometime in August. It's been like I say, a major project for us. It's one of, it's been the first big built project we've done in many years. There have been some challenges along the way. We had some design challenges that we needed to remediate, and obviously challenges around access to Otatara, which you yourself would have encountered when you did your work as well. It's never easy, but try to keep people communicated and updated, and remind the community of the importance of this project as well. We will be doing a lessons learned naturally as part of any project that part of our project closure stuff, so we'll be looking to do that in the next month. But yeah, I think it's largely been successful, and hopefully, no question, this will be a significant piece of infrastructure for many years to come. Our children and children's children will benefit from this, so we're really proud of it, to be delivering this to the region and Invercargill.
Thank you. Well, we now have a short examination for members on the operation of the Archimedes screw. Look, thanks very much for that. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Peter.
Absolutely amazing. What was the total cost of the project, and how is it going to be funded?
So the total cost is 11 million total budget, total cost, and that's obviously funded through debt, and we'll be paying that over years, many years, through our normal rates.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question really is to pick up on what you just closed with, basically. So with the lessons learned, would one of those be people management, trying to get in and out of Otatara with the issues with traffic flow before and after work? And also, I think it's fantastic, as you say, it's infrastructure that will be here for decades to come. And I'm quite pleased to see that the fish can get through. That piece of engineering is significant. I'm not surprised it was made over in Scandinavia.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. The rules in which determined fish passage changed through the project, so that was quite a challenge to respond to the government's changes. And that, the changes meant that we needed a different design, so that added an extra degree of complexity. We always hoped to minimise the disruption to the community, and I think we, at the most complex stages, at the very least, it was down to one lane and not completely closed, but there were periods where we had to close because of just health and safety and risk.
Sure.
We tried at all times to communicate that, sometimes more successfully than others, I would probably concede, but we've learned from it. And we'll I suppose with every major project now, it's just making sure people know what stage it's up to, what will it mean for them, and what arrangements can be made. So I think we'll always try to minimise disruption, but I just thank the people of Otatara for the patience, because this stuff has been going on a long time. So we do understand that, and for the vast majority of people understood and dealt with it, and where we could make improvements, we absolutely tried to, and we tried to minimise disruption as much as possible. So lots to learn from that, certainly if we did another project.
Sure, thank you very much for your response.
Okay, well look, thanks for that. Am I right in thinking that the traffic disruption is actually finished now, or is it still, it is finished completely?
Yeah, the only but to that would be, I think, would have the cranes been moved now? There's no
Yeah,
way-
crane's been disestablished and the temporary traffic speed restrictions have been removed, as most people probably would have noticed driving past the pump station. There is a possibility of additional work we've got to do just in terms of the reinstatement of the sheet pile wall along Stead Street, so that's just what we're working through.
But we'd communicate that well ahead of time if it's ready, but no plans to shut the roads down at all. It would just be subtle disruptions. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. Cheers. So now the third speaker under public forum is going to be Penny Ivy, who's going to talk to us about pets and dogs, specifically in elderly homes. And Donna Keogh, on behalf of Donna Keogh. Hi, so welcome Penny, the floor's yours. So you've got up to 5 minutes to speak, and then we've got up to 5 minutes then to ask you questions, and both of you can speak at either of you, whatever. And I'm not using up your first minute, by the way. 5 minutes starts now.
Right, kia ora, my name's Penny Ivy and I'm here representing Donna Hawkins-Keogh, who is the chairman of Forever Homes New Zealand. She unfortunately isn't able to be here today because she's had to go to Australia. And I also have my friend Brenda Shanks with me, who is actually helping to take care. Do you want that? Oh, okay, thanks Steve. Is helping to take care of the dog that we're talking about in the interim.
Kia ora.
We've been animal lovers all our lives and for many years have worked voluntarily for animal welfare agencies to advocate for practical actions and solutions and to provide a voice for lost and abused animals. We are also dedicated to helping the owners of pets who sometimes feel disenfranchised and coming forward to share their issues in relation to their pets. This may be because they're elderly, unwell and suffering from multiple illnesses, or perhaps lacking in confidence in expressing their concerns in forums such as this. This case we are presenting to you today is one of the saddest Forever Homes have encountered and has the support of over 300 members waiting to hear the outcome. Such is the case of Mrs Shirley Burt, an elderly Invercargill resident in her 80s, a lifelong, hard-working member of the church who, despite limited resources, raised a family of 5 with her husband before later, at the age of 55, fostering the first of 5 young adults. These young people had severe medical and behavioural disabilities, including fetal alcohol syndrome and ADHD, as well as other debilitating conditions. This was a challenging role, but Shirley and her husband provided a safe and secure haven for these young people over several years. After her husband sadly passed away 2 years ago, Shirley was left on her own with her beloved dog, 9-year-old Daisy, in a very small flat that was not adapted for elderly residents, requiring the use of a walker and other specialised adaptations. After being on the waiting list for a council flat for 14 years, Shirley was recently notified that she'd been successful in her application for a new council flat in Stewart Street. However, she was upset and devastated when she learned that she would be unable to take her little dog Daisy with her to a new accommodation. They have formed an inseparable bond, providing each other with unwavering companionship and support, and over the ensuing weeks since receiving the notification, Shirley has become anxious, tearful and stressed at the thought of being separated from Daisy. Her GP has further attested to the fact that the thought of separation from her dearly loved companion is having a detrimental effect on Shirley's mental health, so much so that he has prescribed anti-anxiety medication, something that she has never had to take before. He has written a letter supporting our case. We believe that Shirley's health will be at risk of declining mentally, emotionally and physically if they are separated. Shirley has a very strong bond with her little dog, and after losing her husband and currently coping with her daughter's serious and terminal illness, this has only become stronger. Daisy is everything to Shirley as her life companion and has been a constant source of security for her. Mayor Nobby Clark has publicly commented on the case and expressed his hope for a positive outcome, and further advised that she not turn the flat down. Shirley is a very responsible pet owner who, apart from walking and letting outside to toilet, the dog is never left to roam. As soon as she toilets, it's cleaned up and disposed of. The dog spends her life either on Shirley's knee or on her bed, is crate trained, non-shedding and fully up to date with vaccinations, microchipping, registration, etc. She is a very sensitive, nervous little dog who poses absolutely no threat to property or other tenants, but experiences separation anxiety when apart from Shirley. Her present landlord, Regan Thwaites, and his phone number I have, told us he has had more trouble with tenants than he ever has had with Daisy, and is very willing to give an excellent reference for Shirley. Furthermore, there are 3 of us prepared to keep an eye on them both, and a plan is put in place if Shirley happens to need to be hospitalised or passes away. We are here today to advocate for Shirley and Daisy and ask you to reconsider and amend the blanket rule that residents are not allowed to take their dogs with them when moving into council flats. I understand that it has been recommended to councillors that the elderly persons housing policy remain in its current form with no changes to the policy regarding pets, but we ask that this special case be considered as an exception. We believe this rule needs amendment by stating that cases of dogs accompanying residents should be considered on a case-by-case basis with a pet bond put in place. One size does not fit all these situations. Other councils throughout New Zealand have recognised the strong, unshakable bond owners share with their dogs. The Southland District Council allows tenants to keep pets depending on the breed and for how long the tenant has owned it. There is also legislation about to be introduced by central government. The bill is currently before a parliamentary select committee, allowing tenants to keep pets in their rentals. All responsible and loving pet owners recognise the quality animals add to their lives. It is uncaring and inhumane to deny elderly residents the small but important comfort of sharing their last years with their beloved dogs. After her years of selfless giving and helping others in the community, we ask councillors to urgently address Shirley's case and go further to amend the regulations to allow her to live out her life with her beloved companion in her council flat. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Questions? Yes. Sorry.
How old is the dog?
9.
So, because it says there that when he passed away she was 9, so it's not, because it was 2 years ago.
Or maybe it's 11.
What I'm asking is, it may be relevant. If it's an 11-year-old dog as opposed to a 9-year-old.
I think it's 9 now.
Yeah, I think it's 9 now.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's
Thanks
9.
very much.
Thanks, Trish. Ria?
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming here and telling a story for us, Shirley and Daisy. Do you know, is the dog too old to be registered as a companion pet?
Well, apparently Donna looked into this. It is a companion pet, but the council said it wouldn't make any difference whether she was a companion pet or not. I mean, without a doubt, she
Are you
is a
thinking of
companion.
a service pet? Or
No, well, it's for mental health. You can have your dogs registered outside of with an agency, and it's recommended by the SPCA that they be looked at for mental health reasons, for social and social needs. So everything I'm reading about Daisy and Shirley fit that category.
Yes, definitely.
So I'm wondering, has there been any other alternative to actually get the dog registered so that it makes it even more valued?
No, I don't think so. Donna looked into it but was told that it wouldn't make any difference to this case, to the application for her to keep it, so it wasn't pursued, but it certainly can be. I mean, without a doubt she would qualify.
Yep, definitely.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Rangi.
Thank you, Chair. Look, this is very important. This is about quality of life. So, and I don't want to preclude myself from being involved in voting on something, so yeah, I've got to watch what I say. What I want to ask the Chair and probably through council is something like this going to come back to us to vote on? Is it?
So we have it today.
Yeah, no, I mean, but to a one-off thing or...
Case by case.
Well,
Case by
I think
case.
it's wherever we take it today. I mean, we have a paper where, although there's a lot of, caveats and possible, I think for us today, the fundamental question is, should we allow dogs or not? And I think if the answer is yes, then officers would need to take that paper away and suggest some options as far as what kind of limitations would be put on it. But I think it's a kind of binary question today, yes or no, and then officers can work it up.
Okay, so step by step.
Well, I think there are too many choices to try to deal with, and what age would a dog be allowed up to? How long would the owner have to own it for? All that sort of thing. I think that's for the next round of this.
Look, if people talk about age of dogs, I've had numerous dogs, and age is irrelevant according to the breed. So an age thing would be not applicable.
No.
But yeah,
But
we
again,
debate that later.
again we're getting into the debate around the.
No, we don't talk about detail.
Sorry, who we've got? Steve.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Just for a process, I guess, just to clarify, Shirley wasn't aware at all that a dog could be an issue into moving
No.
into one of these?
No,
Okay.
because she's in a flat now with one, but it's totally unsuitable for her. She's got a bed that ACC have provided because of her health, and it only just fits into the bedroom. She can barely get onto it.
It's a very tiny flat
Yeah.
that she's currently living in.
And she doesn't feel safe. She has, and I can vouch for that, unusual neighbours on each side, and they bang on her door all the time. And
Okay. Is it a couple
She feels
Yeah,
unsafe.
Steve, you want another one?
sorry, how was another 9-year-old dog, Jack Russells can live?
it's a
For-
foxy
Oh,
about
is it?
this
Okay.
big.
How was it toileting at the moment, and how's that kind of
She
being
lets
managed?
it, no, good question. At the moment, she's got a little strip of gravel at the back of her flat, and she has it on a wee harness, and she lets it out on a wee harness. And I've seen it in action, and she carries a scented nappy out with her, picks it up straight away, and it goes in the wheelie bin. And it's never allowed outside loose. It's only to be walked, and she toilets it on a piece of gravel.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
Evelyn.
Kia ora, Mr Chair. That in part answers my question, because I was going to ask about the toileting thing as well. But did I understand that it is a crate-trained dog?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not pad-trained, it does still have to go outside?
Yes, I presume. I mean, it's certainly never toileted. It's never been to the toilet inside, if
No,
that's what you
no,
mean. Oh.
but she's made no effort to pad-train it to...
Oh,
or
not as far as I
has it
know.
needed to, I suppose,
No,
is the question.
no, she's never needed to, no. But it's secured, and it's in a routine where she knows exactly when it's going to the toilet, so it's...
Okay, I'll ask a question to
Thank you.
Ria.
Thank you. Just coming back to what Stephen has asked, on the application form for council accommodation, was there something on there that indicated that pets would not be allowed, or that
I
anything?
can't answer that. We've only got to know Shirley since this case has come to our attention, and we've probably met her half a dozen times.
But it's definitely something we should check.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just out of interest, just for clarification.
I might just
Still
add
doesn't
that
make it
she's
easy.
not happy. She's a very private person, and she wasn't happy about this circus, as she calls it, and she doesn't want it public that her daughter's got a terminal illness, and nor does her daughter, but she's done it just because she's desperate to keep Daisy.
Understandable.
Okay, thank you, Penny. So, you know that we do have a paper on this later in the meeting. You're very welcome to stay for that if you want to stay, because you're not allowed to speak as we're doing that, but you're certainly very welcome to sit at the back and listen. But anyway, thank you for coming today.
Okay, thank you for giving us the opportunity.
It's just got a,
You can click anything faster.
Yeah, true. I've still got that. Haven't done too many.
We'll keep going. So we have the minutes of the Waste Advisory Group, which was held on Monday the 8th of April. I was actually at that meeting, in fact. No one else in the room was, so I will move that we receive those minutes. Will someone second?
Second to pro forma.
Thank you. Darren. Is there any discussion? And if not, then I'll move that we receive those. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Then we have the minutes of the Infrastructure Committee held on the 7th of May. Councillor Pottinger, will you move those?
Yes, I'll move those.
Thank you.
He wasn't present at that meeting.
Pardon?
Well, I mean, if you ask me to move them, I'll move them, but
Say that again. Sorry, Peter.
Who was the chair
Got
of
an apology here.
Sorry.
He was there at the...
Sorry.
maybe embodied, not mine.
Sorry, are you seconding it, Peter?
Well, yes.
Thank
did
you.
get it.
Yeah, I
Um,
was. Too right.
Any discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So then we have a paper on the primary infrastructure consenting programme, which is in Alistair's name. Is Alistair here, or are you going to...
I think we should have Alistair on Zoom, which we do. However, I'm happy to start, Chair, to introduce the paper, and then we can hand over to Alistair if you're happy with that.
Yep.
So this consenting program is a little bit different to what we would normally see with our strategic projects update. None of these, for want of a better word, projects are currently at the point where they would be handed over to delivery. They are part of the early scoping, feasibility and consenting phases of what we expect will later on become projects on our strategic roadmap. So while they don't form part of that strategic update that we've been getting on a bi-monthly basis, I was conscious that I wanted to be able to give the committee visibility of them because they will all lead into becoming the very significant infrastructure projects that we will have working through our long-term plan program over the coming years. So this is the first of these updates that we would be bringing to the committee. Our intention was to bring them bi-monthly going forward if the committee's happy with that. Essentially the program covers our Bluff wastewater consent work, our alternative water feasibility work and our Clifton wastewater work. The first two projects being the Bluff wastewater and alternative water are underway in terms of that operational project side of things, and the Clifton piece is currently in early investigation, given that that project's quite a way out, but we do know that it needs a long lead time. So we've put together a similar dashboard to what you will see for the strategic roadmap. One of the key pieces that we wanted to make you aware of is that whilst we normally would follow a traditional sort of business case type process for projects like alternative water, when it comes to the wastewater ones, we have to follow the process mandated under the Resource Management Act, where we talk about a best practicable option process. So we've got a team together that are guiding us through that for Bluff wastewater that consists of planners, wastewater experts, lawyer, etc., as well as Alistair's here, as he's the project manager, keeping all of the various different threads moving across the program. As I say, with the Clifton one, we're in the early investigation phase of that one, and then we will start to form a permanent team, both from a project perspective and governance perspective, as we start to move further through that project. I'll just take a moment to hand over to Alistair. Was there anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, I think as an overview, I think that's clear. I'm not sure how much detail the committee want to hear.
I think at that point then, Chair, we might hand over to the committee for any questions.
Are you talking about specifically on the Bluff project or on all three?
Across all three, quite happy to take any questions on all three.
Okay. I mean, I just observed before we get any questions the significance of this paper and these projects. You know, they could be as much as $300 million of our next 10-year plan. We get the total plan, I think, is about 800 million. So it's, you know, it's not far away from 50% of the total plan. So major projects, and I think that, you know, we need, as a council, need to be pretty closely involved in them and make sure we understand them very well. Because I would expect that, you know, the public will expect us to be able to articulate about them. So I think, you know, to the extent that we, you know, that we need perhaps workshops and so a bit more detail on this so that we can articulate them, I think it's going to be important going forward. But in the meantime, questions? Yes, Rangi.
Just looking at the 4 options, if we can get a bit more detail on that, are all of them to ocean discharge? Or is there one there that just goes directly to land?
Alistair, I might hand
do you want
over
me
to you for that one.
Yeah, thanks. So the 4 options that are currently shortlisted, two land treatment options. So that's sort of improving the process, and 2 will go through a long land contact process and then go to sea.
Okay, right. So at the end of the day, now if that's not acceptable, what's Plan B? Sending the water, the treated wastewater, to the ocean. What is the alternative to that?
So, in terms of the process that we're currently running, we've got a part of the project team involves the various different stakeholders, including public health and Te Ao Marama. We then have a governance group that has higher level, for example, that has the Awarua Runanga participating on that governance group. We are working essentially in partnership with the Runanga to work through this best practicable option process under the Resource Management Act. So as part of us moving down from a long list of options through to a short list of options, that's been part of a broader piece of work. The governance group have signed off on these 4 shortlisted options. We then need to move through a process of moving down to a single best practicable option between now and September. I think that's currently scheduled in for. Now, in an ideal world, we would come down to an option that all of our stakeholders were ideally happy with. If we get to a point where we've got 1 or more stakeholders who aren't happy, we then need to make a decision on whether or not we need to go back and revisit any elements of the process, or whether we continue to proceed to lodgement of consent. If we, and I'll be very open, this is the first time in 20 odd years that we've run this process. We're very much in hands of the lawyers and the professionals. But what they've advised us is that if we then got to the point of having to lodge a consent with not all the various stakeholders having signed off on the preferred option, then we'd have to go through a process of notifying the consent and having a hearings process through Environment Court hearings.
Okay, the reason I ask about Plan B is that it says here there is a high level of budget uncertainty, and I can understand that, but it gives a range of between 5 and 27 million. Now, is the 27 million if you don't get agreement and you've got to go to something more serious like total land treatment?
So
what's the 27 for?
Yeah, so the 27 is for the most expensive of those 4 options, which is the fully land-based treatment. At the moment, that's an estimated cost. We're still working through the process of actually quantifying exactly what those costs would be, but they're estimated to be in the 20s. Fine.
I just need to know that the fully land-based was allowed for. It's allowed for in these budgets here, but it's not the one you're banking on. No.
Well, it's a matter of working through the process.
No, I see you've budgeted for the LTP process. You've gone closer to the 5.
So when we budgeted for the LTP process, we hadn't worked through this process as yet. One of the difficulties that we've had, particularly for the Bluff process, is that we weren't as far progressed as we would have liked to be off the back of the changes with water reform. So we did sort of make some decisions prior to reform being cancelled that, you know, we thought that it may not go ahead, and we started this project, but that meant that we went into the long-term plan without being at these shortlisted options and having these costs put in, which meant that we had to make essentially a best estimate around what we put into the long-term plan. Now we looked at the range of potential costs as we saw them. We'd originally had an upper limit of around $20 million. We revised that back based on the information that we were being given at the time around essentially pressure on affordability from council, as well as around where things were going from an RMA perspective as well, and we made a best estimate of what to put into the long-term plan.
Okay, so last question is, moving forward, if whatever happens with the Bluff one, do you see a similar result for the Clifton one?
I think Clifton will likely be quite a separate process. Bluff's obviously quite a smaller plant. The environmental impacts of Bluff are very different.
But I'm talking about issues along the way.
I would expect them to be similar, but I also think that we shouldn't underestimate the fact that the Clifton plant will be a very significant piece of work that's going to have, I'd suggest, its own issues over and above what we will experience with Bluff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Evelyn.
Kia ora. You've applied for Schedule 2. Do we know if we've been accepted for Schedule 2?
No, we don't. We have been simply asked at this stage if we give permission to have been listed as an applicant to Schedule 2. And Alistair may be able to advise me, but I think August is when we're expecting to hear back.
Yeah, I mean, the dates seem to be fluid, so I imagine it'll be somewhere between August and October.
So further to that, you alluded to the fact that this may have to be notified, but under Schedule 2 it won't. But then you've also referred to potential environment court. So is this making sure that you're covering, dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's, and being a little bit pessimistic about what might happen, or do you think it's realistic? Because it will not be notified if it goes under Schedule 2. But the Environment Court, I guess in theory, is still a possibility under Schedule 2.
I think the approach that we've taken to date, and it's a difficult one with everything changing in this space, is to play to the legislation that we have in place at the moment. So we understand that there are changes in that space. We understand there could be some changes as early as next year that may impact this consent process. But at the moment we need to operate within the framework that we have in front of us. So that's been the approach that we've taken.
So under the fast track process, the expiry date of 2025 is potentially possible, but for the other projects, definitely doable because they're much further out. Should it have to go to notification, are we in danger of not having a valid consent in time?
So, and Alistair may be able to jump in here, but the key piece for us is to make sure that we submit our consent application within the required time frame. That then allows us to continue to operate the plant until such time as we work through that consenting process, however long that may be.
So my one last question is that you're running the two processes for Bluff concurrently. You're actually working as if it were a normal consent as well as being in Schedule 2.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So look, as I said at the beginning, this is clearly a hugely financially significant project, but very, very significant in a whole lot of other ways, not least of which is cultural. So I think it would be very important, I've said this before actually, that we understand this project really well, and that the range of financial outcomes probably range from, for all three in total, probably range from 50 million to 300 million or something like that. So the choices made, and let's be honest, the key choice is whether something is ocean discharge or land discharge. The choices that are going to be made and are absolutely critical to what our financial situation is going to look like, and towards the end of this LTP. So again, I think in the next 6 months or so, it'd be really helpful to have a workshop, so that everybody understands. It's not a workshop where everybody's going to agree at the end of it, but so that everybody understands what the
I'm
story
wondering
is.
if it might be helpful, Chair, if this is one of those spaces where it's ever evolving right around the country, and what happens in different areas of the country may impact on us. It might be worthwhile us starting that conversation. We can get the planners who are advising us to come and essentially give us a bit of an update on the topic, what's happening from a consenting process right around the country, what we're seeing as being acceptable, what we're seeing as not being acceptable, might be a good starting point.
Yeah, so I'll leave the timing to you, Erin. I just think let's not leave it so long, but councillors are floundering to try to answer questions from the public when it's such a big part of the plan. Okay, thank you. So, I did another question, and again it's a grant.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just wondering whether it's worthwhile having a hierarchy of needs to establish for a workshop, to establish how we would sort of factor the different elements of these consenting processes in these projects. So, for example, when there will be others, affordability, environmental compliance, and community and cultural impact. And so that it enables people to understand it in a more deeper way. I don't know to call them, but the trade-offs associated with these types of projects. And secondly, second question would be around, is there other councils that are ahead of us in this process around the country?
So for the first piece, Alistair, did you just want to talk through because we've already somewhat got in train that process, Councillor Dermody, to bring a paper back to Infrastructure Committee next time to essentially talk through that. Alistair, did you just want to talk through that multi-criteria analysis piece?
Yeah, so part of the BPO process is we do both a qualitative and quantitative assessment around the key criteria. So we've identified 9 key criteria, and that includes quickly cultural values and protection, public health, natural environment, social and community, the financial implications, resilience, technology and infrastructure, the effect on climate change, and statutory risks and conflicts. So part of the process, we assess all those 9 criteria. So to get to the shortlisting phase, it's been a qualitative assessment, and now we're going through a multi-criteria assessment, where it's a quantitative assessment to get to the preferred option, which will be in September. So we are assessing all those criteria. Yes, I'm happy to give you more information if you want.
But I also think we're planning to bring that that information to the next council, the next infrastructure and projects meeting, to talk council through that in more detail, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. That's the intention. So they understand how we're weighting each criteria and the methodology behind that.
Okay, no, that's good. So the timing, I think, again, Erin, will be between you and Grant about the best time to take that. I mean, I think the thing about qualitative assessments or ranking depends what end of the telescope you're looking through. Not everybody agrees with the ranking. So I just think it's important that rather than bringing a sort of completed thing to us, council just needs to be able to debate, accepting that people are going to have different views, just be able to debate the subject at some point before everything's tied up in a neat ribbon and, given to somebody else. I think we just need to understand it and be able to debate it. Okay, Erin?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, that's good. So, right, any other questions? No. So the recommendation is that,
Steve had a question.
Oh, thanks, Chair. So just for my clarity, I know it's referenced in the Bluff wastewater consent, but just around those 4 options that Ian mentioned, are we saying that locally we have signed off and approved all 4 of these options?
So what we would be working through is a process where there's essentially a governance group for the project. They have signed off on that, but that would need to come back to council to essentially endorse and decide whether or not those are the options that council is prepared to go out and consult on with the community. Essentially, that governance group will also work through a process and come back with a preferred option. Similar to all of our other processes, there'll be a recommendation to council. Council can decide whether that's the option that they want to put forward or whether or not they want to take a different tact.
okay, thank you. So we are asked to receive the report, to note that the consent option assessment for Bluff and the alternate water supply are progressing as planned, and note that project initiation work has commenced on Clifton. So I'll take all of 3 of those at the same time. Will someone move? Thank you, Leslie, and seconded by Dan. Any other discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So the next paper is the local water done well update in the name of Andrew Strawn. Is it Strawn?
Yes, that's right. Perfect.
Andrew Strawn. Is Andrew? Oh yes. Hello.
Afternoon, everyone. Yes, so purpose of this paper is just to provide a further update on the legislation, give an overview of the submissions that were received against that piece of legislation, provide an update on the local water done well Otago Southland working group, so a bit of content here, and just the few steps that are required to arrive at an ICC decision when it comes to local water done well.
You might just talk a little bit louder into the microphone.
Closer. Okay, so we've got there's a presentation that is attached to the paper. So, are we okay to put that up? It's in the meeting documents.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I'm happy to talk to it. Oh, everyone should have it in front of them. Great. Okay. So just in terms of the legislation, you might recall that it was only about 2 odd weeks ago. We presented to an extraordinary meeting summary of the Local Government Water Services Preliminary Arrangements Bill, otherwise known as the second bill, and we submitted a submission on behalf of Invercargill City Council to that bill, and Chief Executive and Mayor Clark presented to that committee on that bill as well on the 24th of June. So yeah, I'll get into the attached paper. So in terms of the legislation, we provided a summary of that legislation to that extraordinary meeting, so I won't go into too much detail. The overarching timeframes is that the government is looking to pass that piece of legislation by August 2024, and then that means then that the water services delivery plan that the legislation requires councils to bring together needs to be submitted by August 2025. So that's the planning time horizon that we're all working to. I'm just looking at page 35 here in case anyone's trying to keep up with where I'm at. So we've listed out there just some of the bill submission key themes, and in general there were some just very strong themes that came through from the likes of local government, NZ, Taituara, and the submitting councils. And I've listed those out there, but I'll just pick out a couple. Almost unanimous in that the time frame to put together plans be increased from 12 to 24 months given the work that's involved and the collaboration activities, etc., that are required. A definition of financially sustainable, that's a key it's a key outcome that everyone's looking for from those plans, so let's nail that down well. The fact that those water services delivery plans should cover a longer time frame than the current 10 years. You can imagine, you know, assets, etc., last a lot longer than that. Resource consents last a lot longer than that, so increasing that time frame. What else was worth calling out here? So the legislation provides streamlined provisions for setting councils to set up council-controlled organisations, and a number of other councils agreed with us that those provisions should also be applied to other vehicles, not just CCOs. What else have we got? Yep, so the fact that we haven't provided for all of this work within LTPs, the analysis that went with the bill was very expected. It was not going to be time consuming and expensive to put together these water services delivery plans, but there was unanimous, almost unanimous, that it was amongst the councils that it was going to be quite an undertaking if we get to do them well. Yeah, and the fact that setting up a water services CCO is going to fundamentally impact the nature of council, so it's quite a far-reaching decision that councils need to come to. I've summarised there in slide 36 what's in a water services delivery plan. I won't go into it in detail, but that's something that we've called out previously to the extraordinary meeting. And yeah, just calling out there the number I've bolded it in my document. Water services will need to be financially sustainable by 30 June 2028. That's what that's the date that government is looking for those water services delivery plans to demonstrate. So that's another key date. So in terms of the in the legislation, the next slide just outlines the process that councils can go through to consult, review and approve on water services delivery plans. This really key thing to call out here is really that the powers that the minister and the government have to require specialists to, if they're unhappy with the quality of a water services delivery plan, or unhappy with the outcomes of a water services delivery plan, they can appoint specialists to potentially bypass the council's lead role in putting those plans together. So yeah, there are quite significant powers that are sitting there and available. Bill 3, this is for the long-term replacement regime. So key thing about these plans is they set up they provide almost like the first tranche of economic regulation data requirements. The ongoing regime will be within Bill 3, and that's not expected until the back end of this year. So there was a lot of commentary in the submissions around, well, it's really tough to assess the impact without understanding Bill 3 and let alone knowing what needs to be in the water services delivery plan until we see that. So a lot of expectation around Bill 3. So that's a summary of the legislation. I'm happy to just move straight into the Southland, Otago
I think
Southland.
we might take questions
Sure.
on the first part first, because the second part's different, isn't it? So let's take the first part. Any questions on that, anyone? I'll ask one to start with. How often do the water service delivery plans get renewed?
So these are one-time documents.
The one-time documents?
Yep.
So it's worth just, I guess, putting that into context. The intention is that those are essentially a stopgap, as I understand it, until such time as the new regulatory regimes are put in place. So this is around making sure that you can be sustainable in that interim. We'll then have new regulators essentially coming in to be checking on us moving forward. So the plans then move out once that new regime's in place.
It's hard to imagine that you wouldn't want to align it with your LTP I would have thought, you know, once you go through that initial phase, that you'd want to do it as part of your LTP. And that's any other questions, Ria?
Thank you. Looking through your pages 33 to what was it, 30, 40 something, 41, 42, 43. I guess I'm looking at the written report and looking at areas where it says that work has progressed with on page, sorry, of Boardworks 31 under analysis. The second paragraph there, it talks about the working group or sub-working group being resurrected, and ICC is represented within this working group, and all that it says in there, and then this delivery of information with the slides. I'm stuck in a uncomfortable feeling that this council asked for when we look towards moving forward and quite in depth, that we had a couple models given to us that were costed with how much it was going to cost us to do this. What your plan is, the plan that we've got there, even though you said it only comes up once, we're doing...
What page are you on?
Oh, sorry. Oh, now it's frozen on me. It is page 36 now of Boardworks. So what's in the water delivery plan, water service delivery plan, most of what is in there, apart from the regulatory requirements, isn't that what we're doing now anyway, but in separate departments?
And well, in terms of the status quo, yeah, so a lot of that information will be in the LTP. But what the challenge that's put to us through this legislation is consider what are the other models that could be considered alongside this, and is there a more efficient model that could be adopted through collaboration, etc.?
So Ria, before you do this, am I right in thinking that you're actually talking about the second part of the... You're talking about the delivery model rather than the first part of the...
Sorry, no, I think Ria is talking about the water service delivery plans. I think what she's saying is the government's stipulating that we need to do all of these things, and what she's saying is, isn't this something that we're already doing? Why are we having these additional stipulations?
I mean, we do need the additional because it's legislation requires us to. What I'm saying is it's actually quite positive.
You might just pull up your microphone, actually. Ria.
Sorry, Tom. What I'm referring to in here is when you look at the water service delivery plan that we've got to work from, this council already does a lot of those key areas currently, but what we will have when this is delivered is a regulatory requirement to sit within this plan. So that's quite positive for us, but what I'm referring to is the different models that we've asked to be costed up and brought back to us. I feel uncomfortable with what I'm saying because we still don't have a solid preference of what we can move towards that benefits the Invercargill ratepayers. And I'm really happy to see that we're working with other councils, but I still maintain that we need to make sure that we're delivering to our ratepayers.
Yeah, I think you are starting to get into the second part of there, but I mean, you can... so, Evelyn and then Leslie.
Yeah, I'm looking at page 36 of Boardworks, and the two things that I'm really feeling a little bit challenged by in terms of just how we operate now, the revenue will be separated from other functions and activities, and then a proposal to ensure water services will be financially sustainable. Now, I'm sure that when we set fees and charges, we don't charge full price for water to, on a commercial basis to people, so therefore we would fail right there and then. But that's a decision that this council has been allowed to make. The other thing is financially sustainable. Does that include our expenditure or our debt that we carry on infrastructure? So if we renew pipes, do we have to factor that in to ensure to the government that it's financially sustainable? And I just think that when we're looking at it, we're looking over 70 or 80 years, and we're not thinking, you know, as I think this is asking us to act, but am I wrong about that?
I think the key piece is to remember that this is a regime that's going across everywhere in the country. We know that there are councils who have had issues trying to fund the level of service that they believe they need to meet in terms of asset renewals, in terms of achieving consents for wastewater, in terms of the cost of meeting public health standards for water, that they've simply had to push projects out because they don't have the headroom within their debt funding to be able to do all of those projects. So I think what essentially is being sought in these water service delivery plans is all of that information about the state of your assets, the level of service that you need to meet and how you're performing against that, how you are around your compliance, and making sure that all of the things that you need to do to tick those boxes, do you have enough rates revenue to be able to do that moving forward? And I think that the state of Three Waters in the country shows that there are a number of councils around the country that are going to struggle to be able to show that.
I think one thing I would comment on that too, Erin, is that actually we already do that exactly with our lines business that we own. I mean, we have to match expenditure with revenue for the lines business, and it means that we've got a meter. And probably water would probably end up the same way, where you'd have to meter it and charge on the basis of consumption. But as I say, we already own a company very similar in terms of EIL that does exactly that, matches revenue with expenditure by regulation. So, Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment that while it's really useful to us to have the bill submission key themes, etc., and to have this discussion, I think we all need to bear in mind that we don't actually have passed legislation yet. One of the key themes, for instance, is that there's obviously been a heavy feedback that the Water Services Delivery Plan should cover a longer term framework. The most recommended being 30 years rather than 10 years. I mean, that alone, depending on what the final legislation says, has significant implications. So I think it's really useful to have the update and to keep abreast of all this. But I just want to remind everybody the plan time frame is that the legislation will be passed by August 2024. Until then, we are working and our staff are working on the best possible assumptions that can be made with legislation that may have some possibly major amendments to what's in that current bill, considering what we're looking at with the bill submission key themes, or may have no amendments to what's in the current bill. So I really just want to remind everybody that it's really interesting to have the talk about the bill and the submission key themes and so forth, but to me even more important is the next bit of the ongoing discussions.
I find it comforting though, Leslie, that when we look at what we're required to do, I don't see a huge gap. A bit like Ria said, I don't see a huge gap between, where we are today and what we could produce today relative to what we might be asked to produce. So I think that's comforting. So even if they change it, here and there, and there's a bit of nip and tuck, I don't feel too fearful that we're going to find ourselves in an impossible position. So, Rangi.
Look, it's always amazed me since the start of the Three Waters thing that government has poked its nose into our local government affairs of doing this. Now we have 30-year infrastructure plans, we have depreciations, we have LTPs. I mean, all that, if that was actually audited correctly and checked that we did it, then we wouldn't be in this problem. And it's amazing that they've called it water done well. Now, I'm just wondering, when are they going to do education done well and health system done well? Is that next on their list, or, it's great that they're sitting in Wellington and local government sort your stuff out.
I think we'll probably leave. I don't think that's really a question for Erin, but I'm sure that she would have a go at it if you gave her a chance. But everybody takes your point. So let's move on to the second part of the presentation, which is about how the done well part might be, might be executed.
So I'm going to take the lead on this piece. Now, what I just, sorry, I keep having a little cough. One of the things that I just want to be clear on is that there's a piece of work that Andrew in particular is leading, which he started off around what some alternative options may look like for us as ICC alone. That's a separate piece of work to what I'm talking about here, and as I understand it, as soon as there's some space in calendars post the long-term plan, Andrew's going to look at re-bringing that piece of work back to council. So thank you so much. Where this piece of work's come out of was the Otago Mayoral Forum have received a presentation where they discussed the potential to have 3 streams of work done collaboratively together. One around regional collaboration and shared services, one around an actual sort of more formalised regional delivery model or models, and one around how we be part of national collaboration and potential shared services. Off the back of that discussion, chief executives, and Mike step in here, but chief executives were asked to go away and look at putting together a team that would progress some work in that space. The chief executives put together essentially a subcommittee of the councils across Otago Southland to take forward some work in that space, and the councils that are sitting on that subcommittee are Invercargill City, Dunedin City, Clutha, and Environment Southland. I'm not missing anybody.
QLDC.
And QLDC have now come onto that piece now that they've got some headspace. That group very quickly got together and started to sort of look at how we might shape up a joint piece of work. What we were conscious of was we wanted to be able to get, some early wins, but also to be able to leverage the fact that we've kind of all been thrown into this water reform business together for the past several years. We've somewhat gotten used to working together at an officer level and having discussions. So what about just our day-to-day business can we do better in that space? So we wanted to essentially get some quick wins underway on that. The next piece was around how would we get to a more formalised delivery model, and it was almost very handy that we had within that group, I think, a spectrum of Invercargill City sitting at one end of the spectrum with a clear view of, we believe we can stand alone, so anything that we would want to do in terms of regional collaboration has to have financial benefits, to other councils who were at the quite opposite end of the spectrum, who were very keen to be starting to look at how they could do things together because they were struggling to finance things on their own. So when you've got those very competing different ends of the spectrum, we were very quickly aware of the fact that one model was unlikely to suit everybody, and that this needed to be a process where there was different options, different horses for courses essentially, and a bit of a continuum or roadmap where some councils who may want to do shared services quite formally together had that opportunity, that others may look to leverage some of those services but keep their assets themselves, or some may simply be interested in that informal collaboration piece. So we were very conscious that we needed to be able to come up with a model that provided for a spectrum of that. We also found that there was some good work that had been done nationally in this space, actually pre-reform, that we were able to leverage off around setting, what are the problems with the industry, what are the issues that we want to solve in terms of, shortages of the right people, shortages of funds, the fact that we're all struggling with increased regulatory requirements. How do we be a bit smarter and leverage off the skill sets that we've got in the industry. So we went back to the Chief Executive Group suggesting that we leverage that earlier work as well as the work that Morrison Lowe did for Otago Southland as part of water reform. And we proposed that we engaged Morrison Lowe to pick up that work that had been somewhat done elsewhere and have a look at how relevant that was to us and start to step us through our own process of what would we actually like to achieve in terms of better delivery of local water in Otago and Southland, and then start to move through that process of a long list of options down to essentially what would normally be a short list and a preferred option, but in this case we said needed to be down to a roadmap and a continuum of different steps that different councils may wish to go all the way along that continuum. Some may only wish to go small steps along it, at least initially, and may decide they want to go further at later dates. So that work's gone back to both the Chief Executive Group and the Mayoral Forum. At the moment, we're just finalising getting the go-ahead from the various different councils to engage Morrison Lowe to get underway with that work. Essentially, I think, we've got the high-level timeline there in that presentation around where we intend to take that work back. We're very conscious that there's a number of competing priorities for people, both in terms of work that they need to get underway with now that now that the new entities and reform isn't happening. Suddenly councils are having to look to getting projects underway that they perhaps hadn't expected to. There's a number of councils that are still doing annual plans or long-term plans. Invercargill's in quite a lucky space in having closed that out. A number of other councils aren't in that position. So we're very conscious that the resource is tight across the group. However, we're also really conscious that that current timeline around delivery of water service delivery plans needs to answer that question of, are you going to collaborate with anybody else, or are you simply going to be financially sustainable on your own? And we need to give the various different councils any options that may be viable in that space for them ahead of preparing the water service delivery plans. So that's why the tightness of the time frame. And at this stage, Invercargill's taking quite a lead in that space, given that we are one of the councils that's obviously got the long-term plan already delivered. Andrew, did you have anything to add to that?
Something to add, just in terms of drafting the water services delivery plan. If there is one of the options could be we draft our water services delivery plans in isolation, but have a shared roadmap that sits within there, which basically says we'll come together. So that further down 1 year, 2 year plus to indicate. So for a smaller council, that might be their roadmap to financial sustainability. But for us, we'd be in a better spot. That's about the only thing.
Oh, sorry, the one final piece that I did miss there was that there is just a stream there around, obviously, the national collaboration piece. So we're essentially just trying to keep a bit of a watching brief on what is happening nationally, what other areas around the country might be doing in that collaboration space, so that we can leverage off any of that where we can. At the moment, DIA are in the very, very early stages of how they might support us through this space. Andrew and I have had some meetings with them. They're very much focused on the legislation at the moment and haven't really started to think about how they work with us. One of the things that we've said to them is, are we moving too fast, therefore, that you're not really in a position to be able to give us any guidance at the moment? They've said to us, well, you really can't move too fast at the moment, you need to get going. So one of the things that we've sort of fed back is that it will be very difficult for councils if DIA decide to come in with a different view of how we should be doing this towards the end of the year, when we've already been underway. We really need to either get their guidance early, or essentially for them just to support us through the processes that we already have in place. Happy to take any questions.
Questions? Yes, Leslie.
So Erin, can you expand a bit on how we are checking what's going on elsewhere? I mean, are we in touch with particular councils or a group of others?
Essentially, it's really around us having asked DIA if there's anybody who's doing work that's similar that we should be talking to, but also across the contacts that we have as well. So we're working with David Ward from Dunedin City, who's got some good contacts still in the North Island. So he's sort of reaching out to them as well. And essentially, yeah, it's at that officer level around, is anybody aware of anybody else who's doing work at this time? We've not come across anybody yet who seems to be at this, doing a similar process to us that we can leverage. Even the process that we've picked up from reform, pre-reform, they don't appear to have continued with that now post-reform.
And DIA is not coming up with any.
Look, to be honest, I don't think DIA have really started turning their attention to how they would support us through the process yet.
Thank you.
So, Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In some words, Leslie asked my question, but I wanted to come back to you, Erin, and you talked previously about the Manson and Low water reform document that the council had done previously. Out of that document, can you recall was there a similar theme in there in terms of any indication of where we should position ourselves?
No, the previous work that was done was simply around validating some of the work that the NTU had done as part of reform. So they essentially took all of the projects for all of the councils, the debt positions, all of those sorts of pieces, and did an analysis around whether or not various different councils would be better off or worse off under the reform entity models. So it was simply around, this is a different piece of work, but they're familiar with the challenges for the various different areas, the projects, the debt, etc. So we essentially they've got a good grounding in working with us and understanding the challenges across the regions.
So that, supplementary, so that report, given it was spread across a number of councils, did the DIA have any feedback from that when they saw the similarities or the financial issues or what was within it? Did they have any kind of soft guidance?
In terms back at the time when it was done,
yeah.
I'll have to I'm not sure if Michael recalls, but I believe at the time, as I recall it, the NTU had already done their own analysis. That analysis came out with their position. The Morrison Lowe report came out with a slightly different position. We provided commentary back to the NTU around why we didn't agree with what they'd come out with, and we did get essentially some statements back, but they weren't anything significant.
Okay. And last one off that. So is it my understanding then that I do agree with you that the DIA are currently looking at legislation, how that may look in the future, but they've also put out very positive releases about ensuring that councils empower themselves to come back to them with a plan. And I feel quite confident in the work that you and our team are doing to ensure that we are at that level, albeit in front, to get there. So I guess my question is there, because we're, like you've said, our neighbouring councils are not as in a good position as we are, but is there a common theme of where you could visualise when we do perhaps stand alone and then jump into connecting up through different levers and mechanisms where we can collaborate? Is there quite a strong theme that you're seeing? Sorry, long-winded
I think
question.
probably the strong theme that I would see, and in some ways it's been around since pre-reform, because we have to remember that under the previous two iterations of government, we were already starting down this path of how local government needed to work together better in the Three Waters space. So some of the early work that came out of Otago Southland talking at that time was around the asset management piece of the work, and that's around the fact that we all face similar challenges in there's not enough staff to do everything, so we tend to focus on the reactive, the stuff that has to be done today. So that good work around climate resilience and things like that, the asset planning, the smarts looking forward 10, 20, 30 years around how do we better condition rate our pipes, all of those sorts of things are the pieces of work that too often get put on hold and we don't progress fast enough. So I think that one of the real things when I'm talking to the others at my level across the region is that there's some real wins to be had there. We're lucky in that we've finally, touch wood, secured a Three Waters asset manager that we've been looking for 2 years. But prior to that, there was about 5 of the councils across Otago Southland that didn't have anybody in that role. And therefore we weren't progressing as we should as a region in that space. So I think that's some of those pieces around how do we pull together a brains trust when we're doing common pieces of work to leverage off the resource that we do have within the region, as opposed to everybody having to pull in their own person and often have to train them up from scratch. How do we leverage the knowledge that we have as a region?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I mean, to me, this is, on one level, this can be looked at as just something that we could have been doing anyway. There's not a lot in it that's new. We've been prompted to work more efficiently than we did before, and I think that, you know, that makes good sense. It's forcing us to think about, you know, sharing of engineers, for example. You know, Centre of Excellence for Engineering is a, you know, maybe a centre for purchasing excellence, so you can leverage scale without necessarily being in the same entity. You don't have to be in the same entity to come together and purchase as a single entity. So I think there are some real opportunities for us in this, and it does not necessarily push us to go too far, as I think, you know, Southland Otago delivery model might be going too far. But, you know, there's are still options around on a nationwide basis or on an Otago Southland basis to have those sort of centres of excellence. And it could be that, you know, you distribute them. They don't have to be in the same place. You're purchasing in Southland, you could have engineering in Otago or vice versa or wherever. So, I mean, I think there is a lot of sense in that. And nobody's talking about ownership. Well, we're not anyway. We're talking about delivery. And at the simplest level, I mean, one of the really good things I got out of doing Rangi's job for a few months was that when you talk to the operators, they actually all know the district's water schemes and the, you know, Gore water scheme pretty intimately actually when you talk to them. I mean, you know, we could operate as a single unit, you know, in a heartbeat. There's nothing, you know, that would prevent us doing that for Southland. So look, I think if we see it rather than something scary, rather than something that's just a straight opportunity to leverage the best, we should have thought of them ourselves, but these things don't always bubble up spontaneously. So we're being kind of urged to just think of the best way of doing things, and yet we're not being pushed into doing anything, are we? Really, not at this stage. Anyway,
Not at this stage.
No. Okay. Okay. So, where did we get to? So we've been asked to receive the paper.
Happy to move that way.
And thank you, everyone. Seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. And so, Penny, at last, you know, your long wait has said we've actually got to elderly housing, so thanks for sticking it out. Right, Heather.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I'd also like to thank and acknowledge Penny and Brenda for their submission this afternoon. I think the paper's reasonably detailed, so I'm going to take that as read and just ask for some questions or clarifications.
So, let's take questions. Questions, anybody? Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Heather, through the verbal delivery from both ladies, they mentioned that they had been told that if the dog had been classified or registered as a companion dog, it wouldn't make any difference to our current procedures. Do you have other councils that do take companion dogs as tenants with a bond? Is there any other?
So through you, Chair, first of all, I can't talk about individual applications for privacy reasons.
Sorry,
But
yes.
what I can clarify is that if a dog is registered as a registered disability assist dog under the Dog Control Act, then it is an allowable pet in our policy.
Thank you, Rangi.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Again, going back to my earlier question during the public submission, we've got up there, received the report, but recommendation 2, it basically says the elderly person's housing policy remain in its current form with no changes to the policy regarding pets. So if we vote yes, that's no problem. But if we vote no to option 2, what is it? What happens? I mean, it's...
I think it is worded in exactly that way. So I think initially it's how we get to that in terms of motions. I'm not quite sure, but I think for us today it is actually a binary question. It's do we allow dogs or do we not?
No, but it doesn't say that.
I know it doesn't, but we'll get to that really. But I mean, I think if recommendation 2 fails, is moved and fails, then we'll come to developing a resolution 3, which will be about instructing council to consider how a allowing for dogs policy might be.
So we're going to do that resolution 3 after
Well,
that
if
fails.
resolution 2 fails,
We're going to do that here and now.
yes.
Oh, I think that's...
There is a second option
I think that's messy.
there.
Well, I'm happy for any other proposal.
Well,
I was
Point
just
of order,
saying
Chair,
there is
there's
a
actually no
second option.
resolution on the table.
No, but I'm happy nevertheless to get Ern's advice.
I was just advising that you'll see under the options that there are 2 options there. One is the recommended option, which forms part of the resolution, the draft resolution as it stands. There's also the ability, obviously, to change to the second option to be that which council may prefer.
So that would be then on page 49 of board
49.
books.
49.
49 of board books, option 2 under page 49, which I think would probably be where we would go if option 1 fails. Yes, Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was going to say that there was also a third option, and that partly centres around the question of companion dogs. So we know that companion dogs are not considered disability assist dogs in terms of the Dog Control Act 1996. That's very clear. But if council was to consider that companion dogs were a special category that we would look at a discretionary exception for,
Absolutely.
that's slightly different from option 2.
Yeah.
But it is a consideration that we might want to add in as not going quite as far as option 2, which would mean an existing family dog.
No,
So-
sorry.
So with
anyway.
Leslie, without,
Point of order.
yeah, okay, but let me, without, okay, we'll take a point of order.
Point of order. This is not. I'd like some staff advice on this. I think we're going down a real rabbit hole here, having no constructive option to if 2 is defeated. That talking about companion dogs, things like that are further down in the. I think that's too wide and vague. I'd like to see something that basically says you're allowed dogs.
So, right, so councillor, what Erin said, and
No, every dog's a companion.
so what Erin said, and I agree, is if we then go to option 2, as it's worded in the little table, then that then would require, I think, council to officers to bring back
Yeah.
a paper saying this is what we think, here are some options, companion dog, because I must admit, without wanting to declare which way I'm going to vote, my wife would live in the boot of her car rather than give up her dog. right? So, we know how some people feel about their dogs. So that it's, now whether that's a companion dog by some definition or just a pet by some definition, I don't think she would care. She would still live in her boot. So I think we do, if that option that's on the table, that's not on the table yet, but that option which is recommended, if that fails, then I think we would go to what's described as option 2 in the table and ask officers to bring back a paper rather than, I think in the meantime we would say that any application is sort of on hold. So with respect to Daisy, we would be able to clear it up within a month because you'd be able to bring back a paper. Yeah, you'd be able to bring back a paper next month, I would think, wouldn't you? So we have we have Panya.
Mine was really on the same sort of lines as everyone else around a companion dog type thing. So if we went to page 48 and we looked at if we were to change the policy in any way or form, I think what we have there is actually reasonable because dogs, companions, any way we want to put it, they become family. And you don't sort of separate your family.
Well, you finished, Panya? So Steve.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to support what really you said, that I think it needs more work. I wouldn't vote for that number 2 there because I was leaning towards option 2 in our report, and just to look at the opportunity to operate on a case by case and make exceptions to the rule if parties meet certain expectations. And I think, we've heard in this case, but we're speaking to a broader picture. We've got a doctor's report, a reference from a landlord, commitment from a group of people to manage and help this person in this case, and a commitment to a pet bond. And so I'd like to think that within that, there's scope here to review what options we have in front of us.
I think one of the things that councillors will need to advise on too, Steve, is the practicality of sort of picking and choosing.
Yeah,
I don't really know that that's
yeah.
possible. I think there would need to be a set of rules which would then be, rather than say that this is a particular, this was a particular case. Darren, I think you were first, then I'll take Ria again.
Kind of going down the same path that we already have, that just goes to when I put my hand up. The companion dog issue is really fraught as it stands, which is why I think inevitably we won't be able to go any further this afternoon. I mean, there are disability assist dogs, there are working dogs as far as classifications go, and with our dog policy a few years back with working dogs, we had people trying to register chihuahuas as working dogs because they used them on their lifestyle blocks to herd chickens. And that was around getting a lower registration fee. All dogs are companions, and I think as they sit in this classification, it would be fraught. So I agree with the other councillors who've said that I think this needs to come back with some more options if we're going down not supporting.
I'll take Alan and then Ria.
Yeah, I don't support the option 2 as it stands here. I would support a new option allowing for the keeping of animals, but I also think we need to make it as simple as possible. We're talking about elderly people here moving into the house with their dog, and they shouldn't have to go and see a doctor. They shouldn't have to see a psychiatrist. They shouldn't have to have a swath of reports to be able to do this. It should be quite a simple process, in my view.
Okay, I'm going to take Peter, then I'm going to Evelyn, then I'm going to take Ria. Since you already had a go, Ria, I'll take
Okay,
you.
no, that's
So I'll
fair
take
enough,
Peter
Mr.
first.
Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The most common companion pets in New Zealand are cats and dogs by far. Other councils throughout the country and are promoting it, they're allowing companion pets in their units, both cats and dogs. Should we allow dogs? I say yes. How many? 1 or 2? 2 maximum? Should we allow cats? I'll say yes, we should allow cats. 1 or 2. So I'm looking forward to a paper coming to council so we can decide, but I believe that the cats and dogs both should be allowed.
Okay, thank you. Evelyn?
Kia ora. Look, I've actually had to go through this process for our papakaika, and it generated a similarly heated conversation. What I think is really clear is that recommendation 2 is really very clear cut of no change. Now, we could actually, I believe, ask to reword that. However, it doesn't actually solve the problem that the paperwork that comes behind it is not going to be there to immediately resolve this issue. So we're not, I think we can't mislead people that we can actually solve the problem of Daisy today. I don't believe we can. However, we remain to be convinced. I think the issue that we're faced with is that the way that people see things is that people who go into council housing or other similarly supported housing have fewer rights than other people. If you're just going into the open market, you find somewhere that will either give you a pet bond or has a pet, you know, is permissible. You know, go negotiate with your landlord or the rental agent or whoever. We're rather stricter, and I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that, given that we know that one of the principal things about people going into other housing at the end of their lives is loneliness and dislocation. And the things that provide people with security are those things that are familiar. So if I were to look at myself, the fact that when I'm a little bit low, my cat actually seems to know, and instead of sleeping on the end of the bed, comes and makes sure that the blankets allow him to get in, and comes in and lies beside me. And I think that some of us who have owned pets for a long time understand that. I would like to see us think of policies that actually are a little bit more humane than what is there at the moment. If we were permitted to say that we would like to move option 2, then I would be supportive of that. I think we need to actually start thinking about how we encourage people to look at the places that we provide for older citizens as their home for the period of time that they dwell in them. And there's nothing quite like the dog or the cat at your feet during that time, particularly when it's a long-standing family pet. It's not something that you've gone and purchased in the last 6 months while you were on the waiting list. So those are my thoughts, but I remain to see what the others feel.
Thank you. Ria, then Trish.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I just wanted to, Reverend Cook and also Darren, Councillor Ludlow.
Go to pull your microphone.
Reverend Cook and Councillor Ludlow have both said what I partially wanted to say. I also wanted to say that our elderly, they pave the pathway for the next generation to come, and they've paid their rates and worked really hard in our city and businesses. And I think it's really important that we recognise, as Reverend Cook said, elderly loneliness is a really huge deal now. Isolation is huge as well. So I wouldn't vote myself for recommendation 2. I'm keen to look at our second or even a third with having classification dogs, special classification dogs be allowed to also live in the housing, but I recognise too that there will be increased costs like fencing and those types of things in the future for council houses. So I'm not wanting to support recommendation 2.
I certainly don't want to vote on number 2 up there. Yeah. But I do think that the council the council members have put together a very good piece of explanation on page 48 about how it would operate. So to my mind, option 2 basically covers it. That's just my thoughts.
So what you're proposing then is that if we have a different proposal as a motion, that we combine option 2 on page 49, which is the one which allows we combine that with the list that already exists on
Yes.
page 48,
Yes.
rather than ask
Yes.
officers to go back.
That's exactly
and
what I
on the basis that it would allow it to have effect as of today, rather than at some point. Leslie. Yeah.
Mr Chair, I think the question there and why I think it would be preferable to ask officers to come back is that page 48 says including but not limited to.
Yes.
Yeah. So page 48 was, if you like, a set of suggestions, but it's the not limited to is a very important qualification, because we would want
And
we
I
would
think
want
that-
officers to consider further if that's the route we're going down.
Yeah, and I think that there are sort of questions raised by, as you say, is that list is not as specific as maybe it looks if you look. So that, for example, that you have to own it for a specified length of time. For example, over 7 years. But I would say, crikey, that's a long time. Why have you got to own it for 7 years before it? So I mean, there are some debatable points. So I'm inclined. I think every single member. Is there anybody who wants to advocate for option 2 as it exists on the board? In other words, that we retain the existing system. Would anyone want to advocate for that?
We're getting confused between option 2 and
No,
recommendation.
I know, but as I say, on the screen.
Because option 2 is in board books, that's just a recommendation.
So option 2, as it is on the screen, is that the housing policy remains in its current form. In other words, that dogs are not allowed, other than certain dogs. I'm just asking, would anybody want to advocate for that? No. Because if not, then we'll just put a different resolution now, rather than putting that one, I think. And I would propose that the resolution probably becomes the confusingly number 2, which is in page 49, which is that that the elderly housing policy allows allows for keeping dogs as keeping. Somebody help me, word it for me.
Tenants will be able to move into a council unit with an existing family dog without suffering from loss.
Yeah.
According to specific
Yeah,
conditions.
so I think, again, what I would like to see is that we resolve that general principle and ask council at the next meeting to bring back specific rules that we can debate and agree or not. Now that means that for Daisy, she's going to wait a month, right, before we, finally figure it out. But certainly at the end of that month, we should have a final position.
Chair, could that paper come to full council?
Yes.
Pardon?
Could that paper come to full council?
Yes, okay. So it would be a month and a bit.
Well, I mean...
No, you're quite right, Darren. You're absolutely right. It'd be a month and a bit, because it's going to come to this committee, then it's going to go to full council. So I've actually got I've got Rangi.
Sorry, can I just seek clarification, Chair? I got the impression that we were being asked for the paper to come to the council meeting at the end of this month, rather than going back through an infrastructure and projects committee on the way.
That is an excellent idea.
Yes, and that needs to be reflected in the resolution that's currently being written.
Yeah, Rangi.
Yeah, look, just a wee detailed point that I think is significant and maybe too early, but obviously we want tenants to bring their dogs with them, okay, and that's keeping their dog, but not a tenant who decides all of a sudden they want to get a dog.
No.
No, so as long as that's realised,
So
just when it says keeping dogs as pets, it sort of is a bit open.
So we're actually, what we're moving is that we allow for changes.
Yeah.
It does say with
to the elderly person as it relates to keeping dogs, and we word something that the detailed proposal comes to the next council. But you're right, obviously, it's specifically about people who bring their dogs.
Yeah.
Peter.
Yeah, I would like it to include cats also.
Already does.
Cats already
Okay.
No, I'd vote against cats.
Oh, just because you don't
Well,
like
cats,
it.
cats,
You're a horrible man.
is it cats are already allowed? Cats
Chair,
are
I've
already
got my
allowed.
name up
I
to speak
support
here,
Peter
anybody
for
speaking in
cats
front of me,
as well.
but I think we need to make a decision on this today, because we've got a situation here that we've been told about today where there's ill health involved, and I don't think for people like this, they shouldn't have to wait a month for us to make a decision
Well,
on this.
I think we've just had a very helpful suggestion by Erin that rather than come back to this committee, that it comes to council in its
But
final
even,
form.
you're still talking
We
3
can't
weeks.
make that decision anyway. We need to come to council anyway. I mean, it's obliged to go to council and we don't resolve it. So,
Yeah.
so we would make a recommendation to council.
True.
Yeah, Trish first, then Leslie.
Is it possible that, like we've agreed now that dogs can be in council flats, is it possible that the petition that was presented to us could be approved?
It wasn't a petition. The petition was about Walkner Place.
No, I beg your pardon, not the petition, the submission.
Submission.
Is it, I mean, in essence, I mean, do they have to wait till the council, I suppose they do, yeah.
No, they do. But look, we're only talking about a few days now. I mean, no, well, it's 3 weeks, I guess. But it's not a really long wait. I mean, I'm hesitant to ask Penny at the back, but maybe you know anyway. I mean, the situation with Daisy, I mean, is there a particular issue with a 3-week wait with respect to Daisy?
No, probably not. Brenda's going to look after her in the meantime, and she's only just round the corner from Shirley, so she's,
Yeah.
going to let Shirley see the dog.
Yeah. So just so everybody understands, the point being that even although we as a committee approve, or at least we as a committee recommend changes to policy, it can only be approved fully by council. So it's got to wait to a council meeting before that's fully approved. So, sorry, we got another question from Trish?
No, that's fine.
Okay. So have we worded things in a way that we are... So,
I would just like to add something to that, Mr Chairman. I'll ask a question.
yeah.
Just, if we had an elderly couple in one of our units, and they were married for 50 or 60 years, and one of them should pass on, and the remaining tenant was so lonely, I would like them to have the opportunity to get a pet for a companion after their partner had passed.
Well, at the moment,
At least says up here that they're allowed to take them with them.
that only applies to dogs. So at the moment, they are allowed to buy a cat, aren't they, or a bird, or...
Yes, so our current policy does allow for pets, and it always has. So they are allowed a cat or a bird or a fish.
A python?
So that situation you described, Peter, which is quite right. You know, the old, it's never the man, is it? But the woman is left would be able to decide to, you know, get a cat or get a bird or something. They're just not allowed to get a dog. Okay. Leslie, absolutely the last one before we...
I was going to suggest a wording similar to what the CEO has come up with there to encompass what we're actually asking staff to do, which is to bring a paper to full council.
Are you moving that?
I'm just debating whether we've got all the words in there that are reflecting what we intend. Regarding specific parameters, I think we probably need the regarding specific parameters for allowing dogs to be included in the elderly person's housing policy. The specific parameters is referring to the draft, if you like, of what's already on page 48, which we know needs some more work on it.
Okay. So are you moving that?
It's fine the way it was before.
We should have a pet tag.
What I suggest we do is I'm happy to move that we receive the report. Gives everybody the chance to read number 2,
Okay.
the new
So,
resolution, and then we can move it separately, I think.
Okay. So number one first, that we received the report. Leslie's moved that. Is there a second? Thank you, Evelyn. Any other discussion? Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So, okay, let's read number 3 carefully.
I think of these, you need it regarding specific parameters, do you need that in there?
Yeah, because we're,
Yes,
I don't think it, I don't think it does any harm. I mean, that is actually what we're asking officers to do. You know, how long would the dog need to be on for? You know, that sort of thing. You know, is there a bond available? I mean, so they are specific parameters. So, if you're going to move that again, Leslie? And Ria's just seconded. Thank you. Any other discussion? The only discussion point I would make is that we have now spent more time on this issue than any other issue I think we've debated during my time. It's a bit like people start bringing out photographs of they're going to show photographs of their kids and nobody cares. Bring out a photograph of your dog and everybody's exchanging dog photographs. So it's a popular subject. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. That was a great report.
Standing, Mr Chair, when I was a young lad up here in the Victoria Chambers, I used to have the Southern Cat Fanciers show up here in this particular room.
Not at the same time as council meetings.
No, council meetings were downstairs in those days.
Very, very similar though.
My kids are pretty sad at the moment.
Okay, so tab 9 then is crash reporting. Doug.
Kia ora, Mr Chairman. Thank you. The report in front of you is an information report, but it is going to trigger a number of interventions that we're looking at the moment. It shows 5 full years of crash records and analysis, and an initial examination of trends and causal factors. Trends are pretty clear in terms of intersection crashes, and you'll recall that it was reported that we have the worst intersection crash rate in the country. I haven't done a peer analysis with this, but you can certainly show that intersection crashes are much higher than our overall crash rate. There's some factors within there, decision making, but also...
so just hold on a second, Doug, is that a fire alarm?
It's a door. A door alarm.